Russian market is huge, so we are focused on growing our business in Russia.
Alexander, do you want to talk to us about consumption patterns in Russia, just how willing many Russians are to make those purchases online? I know that you had to step up and say sporting goods and also child development products during the lockdown, but what are you seeing that gives you the sense that these consumption patterns will shift online permanently?
Well, in March and April, we see number of customers doubled over last year. And on top of this, frequency of purchases has increased substantially. So I would say that Russian customers are ready to buy any goods online, and we see very high growth rate across all categories, including starting from electronics to apparel to FMCG to even pharmaceutical products. So the growth rate, customers are willing to accept online if the quality of service is high. And for Ozon, quality of customer service is extremely important. In May, for example, we have achieved our all-time record in timeliness of delivery and overall quality of service. So as we expand our infrastructure and invest in technology, we see that customers are willing to adopt e-commerce as a service and shift their purchases completely to online.
And in terms of the delivery costs, you offer next-day delivery service, I see, to 40% of people in Russia. We were discussing yesterday with Inditex, the Spanish brand, with some retail experts about the cost of last-mile delivery, the final stretch of that delivery. How do you go about managing this particular part of the costs when it comes to getting these products out to your customers?
Well, here, scale, of course, helps. As we fill our logistics pipe with more goods, with more parcels from different suppliers and different sellers on our marketplace, cost of delivery goes down. I would say that so far, well, it's hard to say given, as we discussed, the market is highly fragmented, but I think we are one of the most efficient companies in national logistics overall chain.
Alexander, we're going to wrap up with... I think we're struggling a little bit with your line here. Alexander, we're going to wrap up with you now, but thank you so much for joining us. Alexander Shulgin, the CEO of Ozon, and apologies for the breaking up audio. Hope it didn't affect your enjoyment of the conversation. We're going to take a break. We'll be back in just a moment. US futures suggesting we will have a negative start to the trading session, and we've gone from a 400-point drop to a 500-point drop in the last hour or so on the implied open for the Dow Jones. We'll be back after this.
Is breakfast with the most interesting people in the world.
It's a privilege to get to talk.
Looking to freshen up your listening on TuneIn? Head to the homepage to discover something new. There you'll see custom recommendations based on your listening habits, along with new episodes of shows you've enjoyed in the past. Uncover your next audio obsession on the homepage.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
While you wait for baseball season to begin, TuneIn has dug into the archives and blown the dust off some of the classic games in MLB history.
There it goes, 3-2 pitches, hit in the air and hit well. Center field, Bader back, at the wall, it's gone!
Search classic game replays to relive some of the great contests in America's pastime.
Ground ball out to Jackie Robinson, up with it over to Reese for one, back to Hodges. It gets away from him. Ferris trying to go to second. Hodges.
It's on demand, it's free, and it's only on TuneIn. With the NHL season temporarily on ice, now is a good time to catch up on past games.
This shot score, broken again. Bergeron, he scores!
With game replay on TuneIn, you can listen to every power play, slap shot, and goal of the 2019-2020 season so far.
Suter to Cunnin to Fiala, he scores!
And for a limited time, it's free for hockey fans everywhere. Search classic game replays to start listening.
It's TuneIn Sports on this day. On this day in 1959, Charlie Sifford becomes the first African-American to play in the U.S. Golf Open.
Charlie Sifford changed the game of golf, one hole at a time. The first black golfer on the PGA Tour, had to argue, fight, and even sue, forcing the PGA to scrap its Caucasians-only policy in 1961.
To listen to conversations breaking down the moments just like this, search sports to be part of the discussion on TuneIn.
Ready for a one-of-a-kind look at the NFL? On the PFF NFL podcast, Steve Palazzolo and Sam Munson interpret the unique stats of Pro Football Focus to analyze the league, uncover secret superstars, and discuss which teams to watch out for in the next Super Bowl.
Let's talk some football. Let's do it, Steve. All sorts of stuff. We're going to do most improved defenses around the NFL. Solomon Wilcots, our very own. He went into some detail over at PFF.com. Most improved defenses around the NFL.
Search PFF NFL on TuneIn to listen.
Are you fully informed on the NBA? On the NBA Hangtime podcast, veteran sports writer Sekou.
Welcome back, everybody. Matteo Centeno has resigned from his post as Portuguese finance minister. The move leaves his role as Eurogroup president up for grabs, triggering a succession contest as ministers debate a €750 billion recovery package. Let's get out to Sylvia. Where do I send my CV, Sylvia, if I fancy the job?
Well, Jeff, you actually need to be a sitting finance minister in order to be Eurogroup president. So I'm afraid that you can't apply for this job. And on top of that, you're perfect at the job that you have right now. So please don't leave us. But let's talk about who might replace Mario Centeno at the head of the Eurogroup. At the moment, Jeff, there are 3 names floating around. And these include the Spanish finance minister, Nadia Calviño. It includes as well the Luxembourg finance minister, Pierre Gramegna, and finally the Irish finance minister, Pascal Donoghue. But that, as I mentioned before, this decision is happening at a very important context for the Eurozone and the European Union as a whole, really. And that is the discussion over this €750 billion package. As you know, there are a lot of divisions within the Eurozone and the EU over how to deploy and how to apply this additional fiscal stimulus. And those divisions could actually impact the vote at the Eurogroup level. I have to say as well that the ministers will actually have to be quite quick in deciding who should be the next Eurogroup chief. That needs to be concluded by the 9th of July. So essentially they have about a month to choose who should replace Centeno as head of the Eurogroup. And a final detail about this vote is that the winner will only need a simple majority. So essentially the finance ministers don't need a consensus view over who to choose, but that's usually the finance ministers try and get as many people on board as possible to avoid showing that they're actually divided over who should lead this important body at the Eurozone level, because let's not forget we are an important crossroads for the Eurozone, and the Eurogroup is responsible for deciding essentially how this money should be applied and how the member states could essentially support the businesses and citizens across the Eurozone. And let's not forget as well that ultimately, though, the decision on the fiscal stimulus is up to the heads of state, and there will be an important summit next week. The heads of state have the final say, so let's see what will come out of the summit next week.
Terrific, Sylvia. Thank you so much, and thank you for the kind words. You can come again. Let's have a look at the European yields then. Well, let's face it, the bond market's not holding its breath, is it, waiting for this $750 billion to be distributed. But what we do have here is a move lower on yields as the market reacts to a risk-off tone in equity markets this hour. It does seem that as investors cogitate on the idea of lower for longer in the United States on interest rates, as we learned from Fed Chief Jay Powell, they've decided that maybe we'll just take a pause and have a little rethink about how much equity we are stuffing in the portfolio at the moment. The European bourses then, let's just have another look at the trade. And as you can see, we are firmly in negative territory right now. So is this a pause in the recent risk-on rally we've had, or does it signal a sea change in sentiment? Steve, what do you think?
I don't know, Jeffrey, and that's being frankly honest. I'm just trying to look at the evidence for the big move up and then the big downtick we've had in the last couple of days. And quite frankly, everything's actually been very positive if you think about it. The jobs figures were really good, so that might have got a more hawkish Fed. But actually, no, what it's had is a Fed that's come out with an almost Rumsfeldian statement. I'm not even thinking about. Did he have another thinking about? I think it was just two. Not even thinking about putting rates up until perhaps the tail end of 2022. So, you've got the reassurance from the Fed that the easy money is going to continue. You've got the reassurance actually that the data wasn't quite as bad as expected. So I can only assume that some of those people who have come on our channel have told us that they are long-term investors and going to look through the cycle, and that they're 7-year investors, and they're just not ready to see an opportunity at this level. I mean, look, let's look at, for instance, the market that I know the best as well, really, the UK market. We're kind of middle for diddle, if you don't mind me using such a technical term. We've been down as 48, 4900. We've been up at the height of the year at 7,500 as well, sitting at 61, 62. It feels a little bit more non-committal than some of the other indices, such as the Nasdaq that you've been highlighting today, Jeff, which has been trading at pretty much record levels. So I think the market's very much on its hands. It is very much dependent on the data as well. And also, as far as the UK is concerned, what happens on the long shot if we do get some form of Brexit deal? We've had the CBI talking about how companies are just not prepared for no trade deal Brexit. In fact, they're putting all their efforts into fighting the pandemic. What happens to the UK market, for instance, as I was discussing with a fund manager on the street only 2 days ago, if we do get a Brexit deal? Is there a re-rating to the upside, or does it just slavishly follow the other indices around? I think there's a lot of questions, and to say that we know one way or the other where this is going next, I think, disingenuous, perhaps a little bit not even truthful. I think it's anyone's guess.
Look at the size of the moves on markets. So the German stock market, the French stock market up about 10% for the week. This week so far, we've given back half of that territory. It felt as though investors were just a little bit too optimistic last week, picking up all the good news. Then we had the jobs report to round out the week, and investors thought there were clear signals to the upside. This week, I think a lot of investors are looking for the next sugar rush. Where is it going to come from? And after that jobs report, there was a sense, well, maybe it'll be harder to push through another large stimulus package on the Hill in the United States. Also from the Fed, we didn't get the yield curve control, the anchoring of yields for the long term that investors were looking for. So I think they just turned a bit cautious. And you could see it in the data. To me, it was pretty evident that we're not dealing with a real snapback that's going to happen next year. Sure, the numbers start to improve on the growth side. We get back to growth of more than 5% for next year in the United States, 3.5% supposedly by 2022. But that is low quality growth. And it also tells you a story around the unemployment rate. We're going to be tracking a little bit lower from the 9.3% this year down to 6.5%, then to 5.5%, then to 4.1%. But it's going to take a number of years to get that unemployment back lower again. And I think it's just a dose of cold water in the markets that are saying, well, we're going to see that recovery come pretty quickly. It's pretty clear, well, it may not take 10 years like the global financial crisis to get back to the starting point, but it is going to take a number of years to recover from this crisis. And that's without even factoring in a second or third wave of infections, Jeff.
Karen, I'll pick up there. I mean, you highlight the economic numbers, but I would throw into the mix the health numbers. And as we discussed with Chris Ralph from St. James Place earlier, the number of new cases is rising in America's West and Deep South. And as far as he's concerned anyway, markets are not pricing in a second wave. And now we're looking at the impact of economies reopening and perhaps some more nerves around what that means for infection rates.
What we need is a super forecast around the table, don't we, to tell us where we're going, because we're all trying to grasp for the future at this point. But we'll see how the markets play it out as we go through the rest of the day here. And at least for the next 60 minutes, you can enjoy the company of Juliana, Steve, and Karen. Me, I'm bowing out at this point, popping down to the canteen for a coffee. That's it for Squawk Box. Street Signs coming up right after this. Thanks for tuning in, and stay with the channel.
is going to change dramatically. If it ends up in the ocean, it will dissolve. We have a vision of the zero waste cafe.
Hi, this is Mike Tirico, introducing you to Sports Uncovered, the newest podcast series from the storytellers at NBC Sports that will shine a fresh light on the most unforgettable moments in sport.
The reason why I'm smiling, I might get in trouble for this.
Search Sports Uncovered to start listening today. While you wait for baseball season to begin, TuneIn has dug into the archives and blown the dust off some of the classic games in MLB history. Search classic game replays to relive some of the great contests in America's pastime. It's on demand, it's free, and it's only on TuneIn.
Did you know that with TuneIn's local radio feature, you can stream live FM and AM stations broadcasting in your area? Discover local news, talk, and music stations. Navigate to the local radio section under Browse to listen locally on TuneIn.
Okay, here we go. With the NFL draft in the books and the schedule set, check out a TuneIn podcast for daily updates on the lead up to the 2020 season. Like the Ringer NFL show, where a rotating cast of Ringer experts talk with players, coaches, and special guests about the NFL landscape.
A lot of the other teams that we consider...
Or ESPN's NFL Live.
If there are some delays because of the COVID-19...
Search sports on TuneIn to explore these pods and much more.
Are you ready for the realest first-hand take of what's happening in the NBA? On their podcast, All the Smoke, former NBA players Matt Barnes and Steven Jackson bring their fiery intensity to the mic, dishing on the latest news and drama from on and off the court without boundaries.
Half man, half amazing.